Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our June meeting of the MAG Standard Specifications and Details Committee. We'll go ahead and get started here. I believe we've got a quorum. Gordon's been recording attendance as people have joined in. Is there anyone online, Gordon, that we need to clarify who it is?
We do have a few guests attending today who can answer questions on specific cases. So those that are new here, maybe you can introduce yourselves.
You have Alex Carter with Vulcan Materials.
Welcome back, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Nick Burton with Advanced Drainage Systems. We have case 2310 today. That is the thermoplastic bodied PVC catch basins.
Great, thank you, Nick, for joining.
And I'm Tony Bond, also with Advanced Drainage Systems, working with Nick.
Great, welcome, Tony.
I'm Sarah Furland with McDOT Environmental Program Branch, in case any questions come up for our agenda item number 5.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Is that everybody? Okay, we'll go on to item number 2 on the agenda. This is the call to the audience. An opportunity will be provided to members of the public to address the Standard Specifications and Details Committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public who are attending the meeting in person are asked to fill out a comment card and provide it to MAG staff. Those attending virtually are provided the option of submitting written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website at azmag.gov/comment and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. Comments received prior to the deadline will be read aloud during the meeting. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the Standard Specifications and Details Committee requests an exception to this limit. Please note that comments received for agenda items posted for action will be read at the time the comment is heard. Members of the public not attending in person may listen to the meeting via a live video stream on MAG's YouTube channel. Okay, for anyone online that is a guest today, are there any comments on items that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda but not for discussion today? Okay, Gordon, do we receive any prior to the meeting?
We did not receive any prior written comments.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the May 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. And hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. Gordon, if you want to just kind of scroll through those for a minute as everyone maybe refreshes their memory on that and refers back to their notes. And here in a minute, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion on those minutes. Okay, did anyone have any questions or comments on the meeting minutes for this previous meeting? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Warren. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Craig. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, starting with Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye,
Buckeyes, yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe, Youngtown. Apparently Tempe and Youngtown are not present. Everyone else voted yes.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. We'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. This is agenda item 4, case 22-15, which is to add a new subsection 718.4 solar reflective coatings and add reference to it in section 334. And Kelly is the sponsor of this case. Last meeting, we had talked about an opportunity for us to hear kind of a revised presentation. And Kelly, if I'm not mistaken, I think that in working out the details of that, you were working towards providing that in July. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. My team wasn't able to make it today, so we would like to present in July.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. This case item here, we do have an opportunity if there's further discussion, if anyone has additional questions or comments, if you want to discuss that at this time, we're welcome to do that. If you prefer to wait until July, until after the presentation, that may be a little bit more effective for us as far as discussing this case. But at this time, is there anyone that would like to discuss or has any questions on this case? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. And thank you, Kelly, for working with your staff to prepare that information. I know there's a lot of interest and people are looking forward to that. So agenda item number 5, case 23-01, our miscellaneous corrections. This was recently updated, so we'll just kind of go back through what these miscellaneous corrections are. Item A is section 401.5, change Arizona Highway Department to Arizona Department of Transportation. Item B is section 102.10, delete or by telegram from this section. We've got item C, remove reference to manhole steps in section 605.4, 610.8, and table 771-1. Item D is to correct spelling error on detail 552 by bituminous. And item E is to replace section 107.4, archaeological reports title with reporting archaeological discoveries. Is there any questions or any discussion on any of these miscellaneous corrections?
The two new ones were proposed by McDOT. Maybe they have a word they'd like to introduce on.
Yeah, I guess I can. The first one is a spelling error. I don't know how many times I looked at that detail and never noticed it, but it was pointed out to me recently, so I thought we'd submit it. And the second one, I know Sarah's on the line. She can probably add a little more to it, but the existing title kind of lends itself to believe that there's a report, but when you actually read the subsection, there's really no reference to a report that is there or a report that's going to be created. And so it was felt that the reporting archaeological discoveries was more appropriate title. So I guess if anybody has any questions, we are open to suggestions.
So I don't know that I have a specific question about the proposed correction here, but and Sarah, maybe you're the best prepared to answer it. But what does the section generally state is required?
The purpose of that particular spec is to set forth explain the process for reporting a discovery during construction. So it's who to call, who to contact, and under the laws, the state laws that we have to follow.
So is it more of a notification then?
Yes.
Okay, I can see why archaeological reports is misleading for sure. Are there any questions or discussion on this agenda item? Is this miscellaneous correction? Everyone's okay with the wording as shown? Okay.
Does anything else need to change in this section? As a title?
No, just the title.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, then it sounds like I guess I should ask everyone's supportive of the correction then. If there's no comments, I'm assuming everyone's supportive of it. Okay, we'll have that be part of our miscellaneous corrections case as we move forward through the year then. And certainly if anyone in the future meetings has additional comments or discussion items on it, we can come back to it and do that at the next meeting. Moving on to agenda item number 6, case 23-02, revise section 725 Portland cement and concrete and replace fly ash with coal ash. This is something we had briefly talked about in the last meeting, the second part of this, and the case has been updated with a number of changes to reflect that coal ash language. Jeff, you want to go ahead and walk us through the changes for this case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the information that was provided in your packet, specifically the revision of section 725 dated 5/18/23, which would have been after our last working group meeting. We had discussed in this meeting the last time, changing the word fly and fly ash to coal in coal ash. And if you will note, that's been done in this revision. I will point them out specifically to you. If you go to the new table 725-2, under item number B, it reads type 1P Portland cement blended or underground with coal ash now instead of fly ash or natural pozzolan. You'll notice right below that item X, the targeted percentage of coal ash or natural pozzolan is changed there too. Going on to continue on the notes, note C under type 1T, coal ash is changed there. Next line PX where P stands for coal ash is changed there. Moving down then to 725.2.1 under supplementary cementitious materials. We made a couple of clarification changes there, changing the word fly to coal and adding in parentheses such as fly ash or bottom ash so that people will continue to understand what those products are. And then added another parentheses after natural pozzolan, again as a point of clarification, raw or calcined, because that's what, well, we probably should have done that a long time ago, but that's the title of ASTM C618, how they're talked about in that particular specification. That is the specification that's used for the approval of those products. We also had discussion in our last meeting about potentially providing definitions for a couple of these items in section 100100101.2 under definitions and terms. That was also included in your packet, a couple of definitions, one definition for coal ash, one definition for fly ash, so that we could further explain what those materials are. The coal ash definition came right out of ASTM C618 word for word. The fly ash definition is actually out of ASTM C125, the terminology section. It's not in 618 any longer. A year or so ago, since it was so commonly used amongst so many other standards, they moved it out of the fly ash standard and put it into the terminology section that has all kinds of different definitions for products. That I would imagine at some point in time that coal ash definition will probably go under ASTM C125 also, as it gets more used in other standards, so that each standard doesn't have to define it and potentially define it differently, which would be a problem. Moving on then, section 725.6 under mixed design proportioning, on the second paragraph, last line, the type and source of cement and coal ash or SEM and the brand and designation of chemical admixtures there. Under item B, where we have the list of modifications, item 3 and item 4 both had the word fly changed to coal. And I think that was it. the changes. Those would have been the changes that I would have proposed to make after our last revision that was dated 5/3. After doing a word search then in the rest of the document to see where fly ash is mentioned potentially in other specifications, there are several other sections where it's mentioned, and probably we should have at one point in time just referred those back to 725, but we didn't. Particularly in section 220. You look under the table 220-1, second line, you have must be an approved fly ash or natural pozzolan. We would change the word fly to coal there. In section 714 and 715 under mineral fillers, 714.2.1, 715.2.1, again, same scenario. Limestone dust or coal ash conforming to the requirements of ACMD 242. And then on the CLSM standard 728, again, note 1 under table 728.1, the material is called out there too, the addition of coal ash or natural pozzolan in excess of the required Portland cement content may be used. Actually, I'm surprised it was only those locations and it wasn't in more locations. But. So Gordon and I had some conversation back and forth on how we should potentially do this, since the original case was about cement, adding cement, some new blended cement designations in there. And this really isn't that. But while we have 725 open, we should make those changes that have been done in ASTM. We talked about maybe making this a new case for the change of this word through these various standards. We couldn't actually agree, so we just presented it to the committee this way as part of the existing case. But if we chose to, I could see that we could potentially make this a different case if we thought we wanted to do that and let them run through simultaneously. You already see that section 714 and 715, we have the table, the case we currently have that are making the table requirement changes don't have anything to do with this. So we already have a case that would have involved both of those sections already, two different issues going through. So I don't know, I guess it's just procedurally how we would want to handle this.
Yeah, I think my recommendation would be that we've had a lot of discussion and on adding different types of the cement, right? And I think that's a different enough discussion that I can see those being two different cases. Broadening the use of in the specifications of fly ash to coal ash, I think is a separate concept than adding the new cement. And I think it's worth voting on those as separate cases, even if they are a lot of it happening in the same section. So that's what makes sense to me. Any other comments on that?
I think that makes sense as well. I was going to suggest maybe I don't know if we've done that before. We could do a 2302A, 2302B, just to keep them together. Or you could do different numbers, whatever you think's.
I think Gordon suggested that we just do a different number. It's fine. Keep the two. So I'll work with Gordon and get the two separated in the two concepts.
Sure.
So that we have them separated. But at least I want to make sure the committee just at least sees what we're putting out, what we're proposing to do. We'll get procedurally things separated properly, and then we can vote them. And each one of them could then rise or fall on their own merits.
And for simplicity purposes, I do think it'd be reasonable to not try to separate out the word coal ash or fly ash from the one section, the section 725. Like, just to me, probably you could just leave those wording changes as part of that.
Okay.
Otherwise, you've got two sections and you're saying half these changes apply to this case and half these changes. But as far as adding definitions to the section 102 or whatever section that was.
101, yeah.
101. And then updating all the other sections. And conceptually, to me, I think if we move forward with that, then it makes sense. The only downside is if for some reason the case on Portland cement or the cement being added passed and the other one didn't add, then it would be a little odd, but I don't think the probability that's very high. So I would assume that we could move forward and
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave the current 725 revision the way it is. Won't try to break the coal ash changes out of that. I'll leave it the way it is. And then the new sections that I propose, including the definitions, they'll be in a separate case.
that's fine. And if we end up voting, theoretically, we could vote on the one case to change fly ash to coal ash first, and then we could vote on the other one.
Yeah, I just want to mention that whatever case is voted on last will supersede what's ahead of it. So if the coal ash is voted after case 2302 for this cement, then, those changes to the coal ash would go not only into Jeff's case, but for example, the two that are open for a vote today that don't have that in their cases, that would be added in that section if they both pass. Another thing to consider is if for some reason the changes to the Portland cement become controversial and that one doesn't pass, you still may want all of the coal ash to pass if everyone agrees on that. And again, if that is part of the coal ash case, then it could update sections 725, even if for some reason the other parts aren't finished this year.
Mr. Chairman, it would be simple to completely separate the two.
That's fine.
Even with 725, it would be.
Okay,
relatively
I'm fine with that.
So let's play hypothetical. If we have a vote today on the case with 714 and 715, dealing with the table requirements that we've been discussing along night, and let's say that it passes, I should use that then as my baseline to add the coal ash or to propose the coal ash changes in those, because that would be the most recent standard then.
Well, officially, it's not going to be adopted until January of next year. But to make it easier for me updating the book,
I want to make it as easy as I can for you, Gordon.
it probably would be good to have it the same on both. But in either case, I think I can track it.
Gordon and I will figure that out.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
Okay, and then just, I think last month we had talked about modifying that table, this table 725-2. Isn't that a latest revision from last month, or am I just a month behind now in my mind?
No, that's the latest revision from last month. I didn't make any additional revisions to that table since our last meeting.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Okay, good.
No. I shouldn't say that. Other than the notes where we changed the word fly to coal, the body of the table has not been changed.
Okay, I was just remembering that we had two different tables or something. We talked about combining into one, which is what I'm seeing. But I might be thinking back to comments 2 months ago.
You're a month behind, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. But it's good.
I acknowledge that. That's common.
Well, it's been a little confusing for me too, going from working group meetings to this group and trying to keep track of it. So you're forgiven.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions or comments on this case or what will be a new case with the coal ash, fly ash change? Okay, I don't hear any comments or questions.
I did want to just make a comment on a correction. The packet that was initially posted on our website had 2 copies of this case in it. So if you see extra pages in there, that's why that was just an error in my compiling it. The current one that got posted this morning does not have that issue. So if you just opened it now, it should be fine. But just to avoid any confusion, there was 2 copies in there at one point.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. And this is case 23-03, revised section 710 on asphalt concrete. this item is up for discussion and possible action. And so, Jeff, do you have any comments, or you want to just refresh? If we're going to do a vote on this, you want to refresh everyone's memory on what we're voting on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to turn it over to Alex Carter to do that refresh for us. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. What we have here in this case is this is to allow contractors or suppliers to run a checkpoint on an existing mix design with a like for like material, i.e. a different supplier of binder, assuming they're like for like, or admix. Again, this would only qualify assuming all volumetric properties of table 710-3 are met. And this was originally put up as a case due to continuing supply issues of different products.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or comments on this? I know the last few meetings we haven't had any, and I'm assuming that's probably still the case, but prior to us moving forward with the vote, is there any final question or comment? Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion on this case.
Mr. Chair, I will motion.
Okay, Warren has motioned for approval. Is there a second?
Glendale seconds.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, this is case 2301 as presented. Avondale,
That's 2303, right?
I'm sorry, 2303, you're correct.
Yeah, Avondale votes yes.
Buckeye,
Buckeye is a yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe, Youngtown. That's 13 yes and 2 not present.
Okay, very good. Jeff and Alex, thank you for your guys' time and effort on this case. I think it's important that we have these types of dialogues. I know each time we bring these forward, we're simplifying and making the whole process of construction a little bit better, and it takes a lot of particular expertise and knowledge on these cases, and we appreciate you guys' time and effort. And maybe I'm preemptively thanking you for the next case also. We'll go ahead and move to agenda item 8, which is case 23-04, revised section 714 microsurfacing and 715 slurry sill. Similarly, this one is open for discussion and possible action. And in the past meetings, we haven't had too many comments or much discussion on it recently. Jeff, is this also out? You want to turn the time over to Alex to kind of give us a brief overview of this case before we do the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would. Alex?
Appreciate it. Thank you both. So this case here came about. We have had some challenges with this specific arrangement. This was something that came to be, I believe it was in 2019 that was added. We had conversation with the group, the pavement preservation group that added it. They thought it was well intentioned. However, it's caused issues being that these are non-blended materials. Once targets are established, we found that multiple samples can be taken from the same stockpile material and used for a mix design, creating multiple targets that then in production, even though the same stockpile was used and may be compliant, you cannot produce for multiple contractors or projects simultaneously without potentially having failures. We did some investigation with the parties involved, and we have not seen any failures attributed to it. Everybody seems very comfortable with moving forward with the general design band as the allowable range for production.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I know with City of Mesa, in my discussions with our materials lab, I know we were supportive of this and had no concerns. Turning it over to the committee, is there any questions or comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on this case also.
Chairman, I'll motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Glendale will second this one as well.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Case 2304. Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye,
Okay, yes.
Candler,
Yes.
El Mirage,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear. Goodyear, are you still there? Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise.
Yes.
Going back to Goodyear. Still no answer. So that's 12 yes, 3 not present or voting.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone, again, for your time and effort on this case. It's nice to get a couple of these cases voted on and approved, as we aren't at the end of the year yet, but we'll start to get busier and busier as we get closer to the end of our calendar year here. We'll go ahead and move on to our next case, which is 23-05 revised detail 212 for utility pothole repair. And this case is sponsored by Arvid. If you would go ahead and take us through any updates or discussion on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The latest is on the screen there. There was no additional comments or questions this last month since the last meeting. Just to recap it, we had a change to, thank you, Gordon, to the detail in front of you. You can see where we had a error. We changed it to 601. We got rid of the options for permanent or final backfill, which would be the half-stack slurry, and left it that the agency must approve any temporary if temporary is requested. And then down below, thank you, Gordon, on 355, we went ahead and cleaned up the language and the actual spec to match the detail.
Okay, thank you, Arvid. Are there any
You bet.
questions, comments? Okay, I would propose then if there's no further discussion on this, I think we've had a lot of good discussion in past meetings. If there's no further discussion, I propose that we bring this to a vote for our next meeting. Any concerns with that? Okay, hearing none. Gordon, if we can have that on our agenda for possible action for next month.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arvid.
My pleasure.
Moving on to agenda item 10, case 23-06, new vegetated or rock bioswales. And this case is for information discussion, sponsored by Bashir and Peter. And I don't think Bashir was here today. Peter, are you online and are you able to discuss this item for us?
I don't think Peter is online either.
Okay. Well, so this is one of our details that we had discussed, and I think is one of our likely candidates for the out of right-of-way document when we are at that point. If there's any discussion on this case, or if anyone has comments they want to bring up, and as a committee we can discuss at this time, we're welcome to do that. Any questions or comments, discussion items? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is case 23-07, modify concrete collar maximum size. This one is sponsored by Matthew Bryan. I think we had some discussion on the size of the collar and the necessity of that in one of our previous meetings. Matthew, have there been any changes to this case, or is there any thing that you want to bring to our attention, or just kind of maybe walk us back through what the concerns have been that are trying to be addressed through this case?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. No, I don't have any changes to this as of now. I think in the water sewer working group, I think we were going to kind of let this one go. I don't know if we really have a case against it at this time.
Yeah, that's what I thought, Mr. Chairman. I think we're gonna cancel this. I don't know what you call it, retract it.
Okay, that's fine. So as the case sponsors are suggesting we withdraw the case for consideration, is there anyone on the committee that would like to see the case go forward? Then either we can have that discussion now, or suppose it could be sponsored by others. Okay, I'm not sure I've seen the withdrawal process on a case, but Gordon, do we need to leave it on, or do we just remove it from our agenda moving forward?
Yes, if the sponsor wants to withdraw a case, then it'll just be noted as withdrawn on the case list, and then we won't hear anything more from it. It could be reintroduced at the beginning of next year, but not until then if it is withdrawn. And then my question for Matthew is, if you withdraw it, is the city of Phoenix planning on just updating it in their own supplement?
I believe so, Gordon. I will get more information regarding that, but at this time, I believe so.
And then my other question for the other members to consider is this something that you think you might like? I mean, there was some discussion that it could be a problem, and there wasn't clear how to fix it. But I don't know if there's any other cities that are looking at this as well. And if this is withdrawn, then, maybe they don't want it withdrawn yet. If that's the case, then you might want to tell Matthew to hang with it. If you don't care, then yeah, we can withdraw it.
Chairman, I would say, what if we hold it for one more month and let other cities go back to their operations groups and others and discuss whether it's something they want to pick up as a case or as a new sponsor?
I'm fine with that. Matthew, the request is to continue this case forward another month, and let municipalities have discussions and determine whether they find the value in this case as proposed, or a version of that. Are you willing to continue moving forward with it for another month?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave this on. Again, understanding that the thought process right now is that this may be withdrawn in the future. I'd highly encourage our committee members to go back within the next few weeks and have those discussions necessary, so that if it is a case that the committee wants to move forward with, we can know by next month. Otherwise, we'll likely have this as a withdrawn case. So thank you, Matthew, for your efforts so far, and we'll go ahead and continue moving forward with it.
Mr. Chairman, can I interject a comment real quick on this particular matter?
Yeah.
When everybody takes this back for discussion, just keep in mind that we're dealing with finite resources here and if we're gonna put a standard in place for strictly aesthetic reasons, let's consider the finite resource portion of that. That's all I wanted to mention.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any committee members have questions on that or want to discuss that further? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 12, case 23-08, revised section 610.10 on gaskets. This is a new case for this month. And so this is for information discussion. And we have Warren here. And Warren, you want to introduce the case?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, this is a new case. It was originally presented as just an update to the gasket thickness. It has been expanded a bit to also update some outdated performance and physical characteristic standards that are noted there. This is pertaining to section 610.10 in that paragraph D. You can see in the case packet, it includes the strikeout and the recommended language there. What I've changed is basically adding the gasket material shall meet ANSI 611 and AWWA A21.11. If you research that, they kind of go hand in hand, and those are related to more or less the rubber gasket joints for DIP pressure pipe. So it's more of a pressure rating designation. So that's one replacement, kind of bringing this up to what I see on materials submittals and things like that. Also, the replacing the manufacturer listing, we have as we've been trying to do in MAG, replacing the JM 109 or approved equal type of statement. And that's so moving on from that to replace that ASTM D2000, which if you look at that, that's a standard classification system for rubber products in automotive applications. So I think that's maybe that was what was available at the time. It seemed like again, similar to material specs, I think putting the fact that it shall meet the NSF ANSI 61 drinking water standards would probably be a more appropriate. I'm open to suggestions, but those are the two revisions. And again, on the material thickness itself, it's what I've heard is the 1/4 inch or the 16 inch, excuse me, was too thin, and most vendors have moved on to the thickness of 1/8 of an inch, which is more durable. So that's the case.
Thank you, Warren. So I'm not as familiar here, but with NSF or ANSI 61 drinking water standards, is there a section in there that specifically talks about the physical characteristics of rubber compounds?
Basically that kind of outlines the fact that anything in the public water system must meet the drinking water standards, including rubber, anything we put into that system.
So it's more of a general standard. It doesn't go into specific properties of rubber, like for rubber gaskets necessarily.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming there's been discussion of this in the water sewer working group. What can you give me some, what's the feedback been, or what's the discussion kind of been on that?
Basically, limited discussion at this time at the water and sewer. We've just touched on the thickness. And then what was brought up at the last meeting, that we should probably look at the other performance and characteristic standards. So this is just basically kicking it off. So open to suggestions or comments.
Okay, let's open it up to the committee for any questions, comments, or discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted you to know that I wanted to take this to our Water Services Department and get their input before we make any final comments.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And I'll be doing the same with City of Mesa. I'll be working with our water resources staff to review, and hopefully I can be prepared with some additional feedback in our upcoming meetings. Anyone else have questions or comments at this time? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Warren. We'll move on to our next agenda item here, which is case 23-09, proposed new section 632, water and sanitary sewer tracer wire installation and related details. This is also a new case that we'll have presented here today for the first time. Also sponsored by Warren, with also the support of the Water Sewer Working Group. If you want to take us through that one, Warren?
Thank you again. This has been touched on in the past couple of years. I think Water Sewer finally pulling things together to submit this case after finding some decent material out there that I've noted at the bottom, that document that you can hyperlink to. Currently in the specifications and details, we don't really talk about the locator wire, tracer wire, or the actual tape, the tape that goes above the pipe too. So this case would introduce those. And I'm not sure if this is required, if tracer wire is required in all agencies. So there is language, if we introduce this, basically in the section, in the installation specifications, that would be as required by agency. The tracer wire itself is an acceptable method to meet the requirements of that ARS 40-360-22 that basically says all underground facilities must be locatable. So this tracer wire is something, I think, in Chandler, I know we've had details and some entrenched details and so on that specify its use, but we haven't really had anything that puts that system together that makes it clear what you're actually installing and terminating, and I know things like that. So it's the package itself is logical, I think, in terms of what I've, after researching. There are definitely some areas that I think need some more vetting and discussion. I think we need to work through the working group. Also, I think it might be helpful if I can arrange a presentation maybe from on the technology itself, just so we're all familiar with what it means to use that locator wire and what kind of equipment, how you hook up to it with the equipment, things like that. If we're open to that as a brief presentation, I'll look into see if I can organize that just to help us a bit. But as go ahead and pan through it a little bit, Gordon, please, and we can talk about it. So the first part is this specification to install the tracer wire in our standard mag format. Translated the document into the actual tracer wire material requirements, the connectors themselves, the termination and access, how you ground them appropriately, the installation itself. I've highlighted we need to talk a little more in the working group, because I see some variances when I look at other agencies that do have, how often you actually secure the wire to the pipe, whether it's certain intervals, and how you're securing it. I think we need to talk about that a little bit. The actual location of the wire. At this point, we've gone back and forth in the working group. We're putting it on top of the pipe, right on center. There's some recommendations out there to not do that because of when you're excavating it, you might hit that wire. But at the same time, there's pros and cons. You want to be able to see it. You want to see that it's been put in. So that's something we talked about at the working group. Then the actual tracer wire anodes and connection stations, access box, et cetera, shall be detailed on a construction plan and as-built drawings. I know that was something I saw in Buckeye, is a requirement that it must be as-built in your language. Like I've added that. A little different, and I know we haven't done this too often in the specifications. I've inserted some graphics. It seemed like, since these are more schematics, it seemed like that was the best place to put it in the specification versus in a detail. That would be for the water. You can see it's a continuous network where you have connections at the at the crosses. Basically, it terminates at the water services, maybe curb stops at the hydrants, so you could actually get out of the right of way and connect to the system using the equipment, and everything's hot, and you can locate your lines that way. Actually doing it every water service, I've had some thoughts on that. I may be a little overkill, but we'll have to talk about that, something we can discuss. And likewise for sanitary, similar thing. I know in Chandler, our current standards have had those locator wires coming up the manholes, which has always been a little unusual in my mind, because every time you do the mill and overlay and adjustment, you have those wires and you're going to pull out the adjustment rings, and the contractor's probably not putting them back in the way they were. So this proposal would not bring them up at the manholes. You're basically putting them at the service, similar to every service. And again, that might be overkill, but we can talk about that. So it's a complete system to be able to locate your underground facilities using the wire. I've heard it's a cheaper method to do things. Then moving on to the details themselves. This is simply the trench detail showing the identification tape. And again, that's not something if you look in our specifications, we don't really have a requirement for that. But I believe most agencies probably have some type of tape above their pipes. So okay, you're excavating, oh yeah, it's a blue tape, I'm about to hit water, or green tape for sewer, or purple. So that kind of thing. So I've introduced that. And then the tracer wire itself, just more of a visual to see where it's located on top of the pipe. Moving on. This is something I believe from maybe Buckeye, or remember that, or okay. So I've taken the actual detail that shows the connections, how you connect the tracer wires. Moving on. And then into the actual details of how you take the wires up the services, how you're doing the grounding, bringing the wires up. It would be kind of like a valve box, I guess, where the wires would pop the lid and connect to the wires that are coming out there. So it's all very similar at the hydrants. You're connecting to the hydrant. And then it's sewer services similarly. And then this last one shows how it would be at the end of a line on a manhole. See, the line doesn't come up the manhole. It just terminates there at the base of the manhole. And then last, these are the installation specs. Again, I've tried to be consistent, putting it in the general, talking about the identification tape shall be installed per that detail 399. Like I said, I believe all agencies require that, but if that's something to discuss, we can. And then the tracer wire itself, for that new section 632 and detail 399, as required by agency. If that's necessary, we can leave that. So that applies to the water line construction, sewer, and reclaimed water. What I didn't note when we were looking at the specification itself, there is a section in there. If we felt we wanted to use this for locating storm, we could do that as well for storm. Storm would be similar to sanitary sewer. So a little flexibility there. So that's a lot, I guess, to introduce there, but we can kick it off from there.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. That is a lot of information, a lot of work obviously gone into this so far. I guess my first question is, and maybe I just missed this, but did you talk about in the MAG specifications already, there's references to tracer wire, but there's no specification on tracer wire. Is that correct?
There are a couple references to tracer wire on I believe the boring detail, but not There's nothing in the actual installation specifications at all.
For any of the utility, water, sewer, any of the other utilities, there's in MAG, there's not a specification requiring or indicating tracer wire.
Not at this time.
Okay. And is Chandler using that, or municipalities in general, as far as what you know, using tracer wire on all the underground utilities, or just PVC utilities, or
All water, sewer, reclaimed.
ductile iron, PVC,
Exactly.
clay pipe, anything?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I've heard that even DI is not locatable underground because of the wrapping and things like that.
Okay. Okay. So the case is being introduced basically to fill a gap in specifications that exist today, as far as needing to be able to locate the pipe materials per Arizona revised statutes.
Yes.
And most municipalities probably already having a requirement stated in their own documents somewhere, but there's no uniform specifications on that.
Correct.
Okay, very good. We'll open up questions, comments, discussion from the committee.
I think I'd say I commend this working group. It looks like they put a lot of effort into this, and quite honestly, some of the challenges from our end was the termination of the tracer wire. So far, what I see, I'm liking. It's giving clear direction. There's never been clear direction on how to terminate the wire, and like stated, it comes up inside the manhole, and you're in there trying to do a rehabilitation on the manhole. That comes with its challenges. They bring it up in the valve box. Operators drop their power keys in there, and it gets twisted up in the power key. So I commend you guys for the effort you're putting into this.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had a similar issue, I know, in Chandler's history, where we had it in the valve box, and you're right, the exercise equipment would wrap it up, and so we then moved it outside of the valve box, but you're right, the termination has really never been clearly understood.
We used on our force main for our Luke lift station. We had two welded pipes, HDPE welded, and they snake around, obviously, and then you have elbows, but we had to tracer wire it, and because we didn't have manholes to draw a straight line, and we ended up using a snake pit, which is basically a hand hole where the tracer wire comes up through. And that's the first time I've seen anything like that used for that type of application in Glendale in the 18 years I've been here. So we kind of got creative with it, but I like where you guys are going.
Thank you.
So Warren, on the page that's shown right there on the screen, the note at the bottom talks about maybe the starting document that you used, what came from Minnesota Rural Water Association Utility Logic, something like that. So in your research, did you kind of go through and look through all the different municipalities here in the valley, and they're just, nobody had a specification, or why was that document chosen as kind of the starting point?
I think there was limited information in other agencies' materials. Chandler, for example, just has some details and some notes about it in our supplements, but we didn't have anything that really lays out how to do the wires, the connectors. Probably the most detailed write-up is in the Buckeye design manual that kind of gives a half a paragraph, maybe a page worth of information on how they do it, but there's no, and a couple details that supplement how to do the wires. But as far as other agencies, I did some research. I really didn't find much more than probably 3 or 4 that require or state that they require it. So I think that's helpful information to get back from this committee when you get with your utility folks and what their feeling is on this.
And
Yeah,
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, Avondale has the details or minimal specs and details on it. We've actually got a detail on the valve box because we use the type C's. So where we got the wire comes outside of the box, we had the same problem with the wires getting tangled up in the automatic keys that open the valve. So we got some of it, but this takes it a lot more. And one of the things that we wanted to do is emphasize the testing of it as well, because you can put it in the ground, but if it's not hooked up properly and tested, it's not going to serve it. It's not going to work. So the testing is kind of as far as my perspective, is just an important piece as well. So to get it installed right, and then make it continuity tested is critical. Otherwise, you can't use it. So the other thing too that this is good is in our working group we have another case coming through for Municipex for services, and so they that's instead of in lieu of copper, and it's pretty popular. That might become a case. We'll see how it works. Goes through the agencies, see how they think of it. But again, for that, because it's not copper, you're going to have to put a tracer wire on that. So one of my comments, Warren, is that we may want to, preempt that and at least put something in services here in case the Municipex gets voted in as an alternate to copper services.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, we skimmed over, but that's in the new 632.5 testing, Gordon. I did highlight that testing statement. That we can talk through a little more either here or in the working group, but I did at least put something to start the discussions on that.
But yeah, we'll get more in depth in the working group. One of the things, Warren, I know the cities can verify that that it's that there's a continuity with it, but I think we want to add in there where the agency, if they don't have the capabilities or wherewithal to do that, that independent third party could be used. The contractor would have to hire a developer to verify the continuity test.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, we'll do. And
just as an option. I mean, hopefully most agencies can do it themselves, but there are third parties out there that do it. A lot of the companies that do cathodic protection can do it. So anyways, that's all I had for now, and we'll do a lot more of it in the working group as well. But yeah, it's a really detailed. So thank you, Warren. So
no problem. And lastly, I forgot to mention that last measurement and payment. Instead of this being a new pay item, it would still be considered part of and included in the water line and sewer line construction. So we don't want that another pay item, would we?
Yeah. So in the discussion so far, has there been a discussion of what the potential cost impact, or this is a requirement anyway, so it doesn't really reflect a new cost on a project?
That's my understanding. Because they're already laying those wires out, the copper, the additional terminations, things like that. Again, I haven't seen and witnessed how it's being done.
Typically, that's going to be the additional costs that are associated with it is your terminations, your connections, wherever you're going to use your anodes for your potential changes. There's a cost associated with that. Your terminations, we've used valve boxes, we've used the snake pit connection as well. There's cost associated with that. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a location for them to be located, to be utilized, then there's really no need to have the wire. There's no reason to have the wire if there's nothing to use. Sure. So there's a lot of argument to say, hey, this is absolutely necessary. You got to find it, you got to locate it, and you got to use it from there. Some of the spacings that we're talking about here, okay, we put everything, some of our connection stations at fire hydrants. They're always available. They're always out there, and you can always see them. You know where they're at. So if you need to go by, you just find a yellow widget sticking up in the air and connect onto it, and off you go. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. This is really great. We'll definitely have some conversations. Good. I think I've already sent an email out to the water department to get them involved as well.
Yeah, we've got to do this because with all the new technologies and so much of the utilities being installed, like the dry utilities being bored, you know, it's imperative that cities, agencies locate their utilities accurately. You know, you can't always rely on as-built, but you know, something like this that you can physically trace gives you that extra assurance. So I think it's something we got to have in here. It's just.
Yeah, Jim, you also mentioned the testing. I think that's critical. In my former life, that's exactly what we did. In fact, it was a requirement prior to paving. And our locator came out and we literally walked the entire project, and wherever there was a break, he would locate where the break was, because that was, you know, you could do that, work in either direction. Contractor fixes it, we go back through, double check it. And before we're putting asphalt down, we know that that thing has connectivity all the way through, and it's going to be useful for our water department in the future.
What if it's a directional bore and you lose continuity on a directional bore? At that point, do you just pothole and repair where it's broken? Or do you drop a marker ball? We ended up dropping marker balls because when we directionally bored that 10-inch HDPE, we lost the tracer wire under Glendale, and there was no way we were going to pothole the PCCP. So we ended up having to drop a marker ball in.
Yeah, I don't know. Arvid could comment on that. He does a lot of this, and I asked them, and you know, they can bore with tracer wire attached to the pipe.
Yeah, we were able to do that, but we did lose in one spot in particular. We lost about a 400-foot run. Maybe it was a little less than that. The tracer wire where it didn't go through.
Yeah. And that's the risk you take in HDD, of course, is you don't know to what extent do you know. Did they tape it to the product line? Did they tape it every foot, or did they tape it every 10 feet or 5 feet?
Ultimately, like I said, we ended up just dropping in 3M marker balls, but I didn't know what else to do on that particular application. If they cut the PCCP, I might get an earful.
Oh, no, you're right on that regard. So yeah, one of the discussions we had in the working group was when it comes to the trenchless applications, we have a tendency of using a lot of duct tape to ensure that we're doing everything in our ability. So we'll tape it every foot on the HDPE or whatever the product is, because you've also not only got the risk of it getting torn, but you've got the rotation. Oftentimes the HDPE will rifle as it gets pulled back. And so now you're getting that tracer line almost corkscrewing through the ground. And that is the risk, though, with testing. The other thing I've seen agencies do across the country is they'll pull in a PVC conduit that's taped to the product line, and then they'll put the tracer wire down through that. So that is another alternative to just hopefully avoid damaging the tracer wire. But there's also the risk that you're going to damage that small PVC pipe. So trenchless opens its biggest challenges. Historically, we like to do what the railroad does, which is when you cross the railroad, you typically see a vent pipe sticking up on either side of the right-of-way, just outside the right-of-way on either end of the casing or on either end of the bore. And that gives you your visual point of alignment, so you know that's where this crossing is at. So that's something that could be considered on different applications of whether you put a tracer ball at either end or something along that line. To your point, real quick, of what happened in that scenario, we've done it before where you'll go in and you'll core a hole in the concrete, pothole down, find the top of that line, and then, like you said, that's probably what you did, is you can drop in a tracer ball at that location.
Yeah, it was either excavate a 12 by 12 panel,
right,
and deal with the load transfer doweling and all that, or core it.
Yep.
And then drop in some high strength concrete right behind it.
Yeah, no, that was a good call. That was a good way to still give your ability to find stuff and not do a lot of damage to the existing grade. So we've got options.
Well, thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely.
So Arvid, on that note, same thought process. Would it be something that may be an idea to maybe double up on a tracer wire when you're doing an HDD? So if you do lose one, you got the other. Is that something that could be a possibility, or is that basically if you're going to lose one, you're going to lose both?
No, that's a great point. On larger projects, if you're pulling a non-conductive product through the ground, other than, let's just say, steel, then yeah, you could put 2 or 3 strategically placed on the pipe. Maybe put one at 6 and one at 12, one at 3, one at 9, and tape them. You're going to be taping it up, and wire is cheap, so you might as well put on as much as you feel comfortable with. And that comes down to the ground conditions, the length of the bore, how big is the overcut, is the driller pumping the mud at the proper viscosity to allow for a slick pull through. If they're doing all those things and everything falls in their favor, then odds are, yeah, those lines will make it. Historically, when we see the titration line break on the product pullback is when they get into cobbles or rocks or gravel, or they're not pumping their mud runny enough is the best way to put it to help a nice slick pull through. If they let that mud bundle up, then all those cuttings start to bundle up, and that's when we see that tracer wire get torn off. And then to that point, Craig, you can also go with a heavier gauge wire through the HDD section. That would be another alternative, is just go with instead of a 12, maybe go with a 10 or an 8, because that's going to give you better possibility of life.
Okay, all great stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
Warren, that's really good information there. We could maybe do a spec just maybe specific for trenchless. You know, you beef it up, maybe use a 10 gauge wire and require minimum points of contact for taping, something like that.
Okay, thank you, Warren, for the introduction of this case. There's a lot of information there, obviously. I'm certain that municipalities will want to take some time to go back and review that, and I'm sure we'll have many months of good dialogue coming up on this case and all the little aspects of it. So thank you for your time so far, and we look forward to continuing this discussion moving forward.
Mr. Chair, one last question. Did you want to pursue a presentation in this group or the working group, or wait another month? Because I know we were talking possibly, what's your thought on the presentation?
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with the presentation. There's a lot of information here, so I think that would be helpful. Let's talk about timing afterward. I think it's definitely something that I would want to invite some of my city staff to at least watch online. So I think moving that direction would probably be good, though. Just timing wise, whenever makes sense, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I think allowing some time for people to digest what's already here will probably be beneficial to allow them to start generating some questions.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, case 23-10, thermoplastic bodied PVC drain basins for the outside right-of-way document. And Warren, looks like you're the winner again.
I will briefly kick this off, and then I'm going to turn this over to Nick. Thank you, Nick. And I know this has been discussed in the outside right-of-way working group since I believe last August. So, and I know I'm familiar with the product. I think most of us have probably seen this on site in many instances. These types of structures for storm systems. So it's well used in the valley and elsewhere, I know, but and that's another large case and lots of effort here, but Nick is definitely the one that can give us the update and talk this through.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. So we've sat on the outside the right of way subcommittee for almost around a year now, kind of presenting this case, and this is the first time we've got it pushed to the main committee. So we've made a little bit of progress from where we first started with this, but yes, we understand that we are applying for outside the right-of-way application, and this is going to be our PVC thermoplastic body PVC drain basins. It'll be integrated with a ductile iron or steel bar frame and grate. And in the detail packet I included, there's both of those, with a concrete collar included for trafficked areas or where otherwise deemed necessary. New construction details are also included if you want to scroll down a little bit, Gordon, as well as the spec. And as you kind of go down through this, we're applying for 12-inch through 36-inch thermoplastic bodied PVC drain basins. This right here would be with our ductile iron frame and grate option. If you keep scrolling through this detail packet, there's just individual details for what these castings look like from 12 inches to 30 inches. And then if you want to scroll down to where the steel bar is, what we call our mag style frame and grates, that model of mag 535 for a 2x3 steel bar grate and a mag 537 for a 2x2 steel bar grate. So right here is the 2x2 steel bar frame and grate, same sort of thing. There's a ductile iron base plate that adapts to make the square to circular connection. And then the same sort of idea here for the mag 537 style grate. Steel bar, it has a base plate that adapts to connect the circular basin PVC part to the rectangular 2x3 steel bar frame and grate. As Warren kind of mentioned, we have a very large presence in the valley for this. It's being used on off-sites, or I guess on sites all the time, so outside the right of way currently. So that's why we are pursuing this spec for everybody else.
And Nick, it sounds like you're still working through the outside right of way group on the numbering and things like that, right?
Yes, so Gordon has given us the case number for this, but yeah, everything else I've just kind of included with placeholders for now. I think that will come to light more as that subcommittee document progresses.
Okay, so I guess the first question I have is on this case. Typically, what we're looking to do as a committee is provide specifications and details to provide consistency throughout the municipalities for details or specifications that are commonly used. So I think maybe the commonality aspect of this or the frequency of use is something that makes sense that we could introduce a detail. The second aspect of this, though, is we're typically looking to provide details that are universal and that are provide for multiple manufacturers or suppliers to be able to meet the detail. So my first question is, are these details specific to a particular manufacturer and product, or are they generic in nature? And if so, how many different manufacturers can meet the detail and specification?
Yeah, we've designed these as non-proprietary. Obviously, Tony and I with ADS, we're kind of leading the charge here, but there are numerous other manufacturers out, just to name a few, Harco, NDS, that do similar style basins. So it wouldn't just have to come from one manufacturer. Like I said, we're just leading the charge here.
So are there aspects of the details or specifications that need to be modified in order to allow these other manufacturers? Or are there very specific elements in these details right now that limits those other manufacturers from use?
To our knowledge, these are as general as we can make them. It looks like, just from a drafting standpoint, the word nyloplast is on a few of the details if you scroll up to the individual ductile iron castings. That's the only place where I see something that would be considered proprietary, but we can work on that as we redraft these. Okay. But yeah, everything else should be pretty standard across the board for what we understand other companies who do something similar would be putting out as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I would, I guess, request from the outside of right-of-way working group to get feedback from some other manufacturers, and I'd love to hear the comments and feedback from other manufacturers as well, is if they have if they're supportive of the details, or if they have recommendations or suggestions on the details and specifications. If those in the outside right-of-way group working on this could help to provide that information, I think that would be helpful. Other feedback, questions, comments from the committee? Nobody else? Just me today. Okay, well, thank you for the work on this case so far. Look forward to continuing to see it progress. And again, I'd encourage the committee to go back and review these specifications and details that have been prepared, talk to others within your municipality that may want to provide feedback, and we'll continue to have some more discussion in future meetings. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. Agenda item 15 is new or potential cases for 2023. This is an opportunity for members of the committee to discuss any potential cases that are considered for introduction here in the near future. Gordon, I think we were going to talk a little bit about the outside of right-of-way document, but I think Peter kind of leading that up, and he's not present today for this meeting.
I'm here now. I'm here now.
Oh, he's here.
Yeah, I got my other committee over with, and for some reason did not get connectivity, so I climbed up to the top of the hotel I'm at, and I'm there now.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. So we're on this newer potential cases, and I know there was some email correspondence back and forth. Do you want to talk about a potential case for the outside of right-of-way document as an idea, or a document as a whole, I guess?
Yeah, and I think the case that was just brought up was a great example of how do we put numbers, how are we going to organize these as they come together. So Gordon and I, and of course yourself, we had some correspondence going back and forth, and I don't know if you've got any of that available, Gordon. We talked about trying to put this together as a case to be presented at the next meeting that would potentially show the general format. We've got to decide, what are we going to call these things? How are we going to number them? How are we going to number the standards versus, or the specifications versus the details? The sections, how are they going to come together in the most general sense? And of course, the forward that goes with that. We've got the forward drafted up. I think we worked on it. So the idea was to package this all as a case and have it voted on this year. So next year we could actually have a document coming together as we're getting these cases occurring. Like I said, unfortunately, where I'm at, I can't access what I put together before. I've been trying, but basically, I put together a table of contents from something we put together, I think, back in 2016, and it generally showed a table of contents with potential items that would go in the categories. So that's the general idea of the case that would be put forward.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of supplement your thoughts there, Peter. So in discussing this, we've talked a lot throughout this year in particular, but past years also, about an outside of the right-of-way document. And this is kind of a pretty big change moving forward. And from my perspective, I think it would be beneficial as we move forward to ensure that the first time we actually present a document, that it's well thought out, it's organized, it's structured well. And I feel like, first of all, to actually have a document ready to publish will probably require us to go into next year and have that published, probably not for the start of 2024, but perhaps the following year. But also, I feel like this being a pretty big deviation from our current practice, where all of our documents are right-of-way based, I feel like it'd be important just to introduce a case that presents the idea of the outside of the right-of-way document and what its purpose is, what its intent is. And then going back to the things that Peter talked about, the kind of the forward and the table of contents, identifying these are some of the types of things that are going in here, but a case that basically presents the concept and the document as an entity that will become part of the MAG library, if you will. And then as we work next year and we can have multiple cases perhaps go through the year and get approved, when it's time to publish the document, we'll have more than one detail or one specification that's been approved at the time that goes into a publication. So I guess kind of that's my thought, is perhaps the case this year, as it's is a standalone case presenting the theory or the idea behind the outside of right-of-way document. And so first I wanted to get some feedback from the committee on that idea for that case. And then assuming assuming that's something we're moving forward with, again, we'll want to dial down and start looking at some of the specifics we can include in that case, such as structure, format, numbering, and those different elements. So I'd like to get some feedback from the committee at this time.
Mr. Chair, I think that's a great idea, setting up that shell of what that document's going to look like, just the concept. I think that would help set the stage for all these other cases that are coming forward, how they're going to fit in, just that format, so we can all visualize what's going to be introduced as a new document.
I think it also will help when new cases are submitted. Right now, Peter introduced the bioswales as the first one. Today, we see there's another one for the PVC catch basins, and there'll probably be more in the future. But I want to make sure that when it's on the agenda and when people are voting on it, it's very clear to them which document it goes in. And when we send out the final MEG specifications and details update to, for example, the public works directors and reviewed by our regional council, they know that this is the stuff that's in the main book that's adopted by their council. This other thing is you can use it as a supplement if you like, but it's a different thing. So, people aren't confused with, oh, these catch basins are going to be put in the middle of my street. Stop doing that. No, that's not what those are for. Those are for parking lot in the outside right-of-way document. And I know we discussed earlier about keeping them as separate documents. That was kind of the consensus of the committee. And I think making that very clear and having that framework will be helpful in putting these new cases through.
I think also it's going to allow some of the agencies to look at their supplements and realize they've got essentially some things that really are outside right away. And when I started putting this table of contents concept together, it started falling in there. There are agencies that have bicycle racks, for example. That's obviously something that would not be in the streets, but there are supplements for those, trash receptacle enclosures. So it's not like we don't have certain things like that. Wire mesh gabions, another one that was in there. So one of the things I looked at was like just formalizing this thing. We've had this idea of percolation infiltration testing. Well, we could have a section on earthwork. Geotechnical investigations have been talked about. So we'd have sections like earthwork, site improvements, and of course, water and storm drainage would be a parallel one, but there would be things outside. The detention tanks are a great example. Dry wells. Finally, materials like parking lot paint, which would be very different than street paint that's being used. So I think they'll fall into natural categories. It's a matter that we should probably formalize it now. And I think it's going to initiate some of the agencies to look at their supplements and go, oh, this is a great one that would go in an outside right away, which we already have. Maybe other agencies would like to utilize it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that framework, and if you have a certain set of contents and maybe the numbering system that parallels what agencies are using, then they can say, hey, you just put it in there and vote on it and see if people want it in there or not. There's all sorts of stuff that could possibly be added quickly once it's ready.
Yeah, I think we'd get some very quick content going in if there's better understanding of what those elements would be. So again, kind of a straw man table of contents with the categories, but maybe some potential ones. You can see some of the cases that we're even talking about right now and how they would fit in. It would give us a chance as a group to debate it and identify, well, gee, I don't like the title of this, or I want it more parallel to that, as opposed to having to deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, any other discussion or feedback? Okay, thank you, Peter. I think from what I've heard, there's support for that moving forward as a case on that. Are there any other new potential cases that maybe won't be discussed as part of the working group reports that would like to be brought up at this time? Okay, then let's move on to agenda item 16, which is our working group reports, and we'll start with the water and sewer working group.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we met, it was online only on May 16th. So we basically just covered everything that we talked about today. So it's kind of kind of interesting that way. We kind of talk about it in general here, and then we get it in more of the weeds and details at the working group. So I'm not going to really go into detail of everything we talked about. I think we're done with the utility pothole repair. We really don't have anything to add to that. So I think we can definitely vote on that next month. We had some discussion a little bit on the Phoenix case on the concrete collars, and I think, Matthew got a little discouraged. The issue we had is like, okay, you have this maximum radius on the adjustment rings, and I am actually kind of in favor of that because they do get carried away. But the problem is that what happens if the contractor goes too large? Then what do you do? And it was one of those where maybe the solution is worse than the fix is worse than the problem, because then you got to, I guess in Phoenix they would actually go back and cut out the asphalt, so now you got a separate asphalt patch, and then you do a do-over on the ring, and so now you got more joints in the asphalt. So I don't know, it just didn't seem like they're, I think the focus on this is to make sure we don't get large holes, and I think the specification or the technology on the locating needs to be looked at to try to make sure that we don't have these blank holes or where they're trying to find these valves and manholes, and that's usually what makes these holes bigger, because they weren't accurately adjusted or lowered, so then they're hard to find. But anyways, so there might be some potential for something similar to this case in the future, I think. And there's probably still some interest. And the other thing we spent a lot of time on was Warren's case, the tracer wire, a little bit on the gaskets. And that was really about it. I know on the PECs, the Municipecs, they're still looking for a sponsor. I think Gilbert or one of the East Valley cities, Queen Creek, is using it exclusively now. So, we're starting to see the stuff in the ground in the right of way. So again, they're still looking for a sponsor. So if there's anybody in any agency interested in picking that up, I think it's ready to go to a case, formal case.
Hey, Jim, I did get an email from Angeline.
Yeah.
Gilbert, and so they're still looking at it. They're not ready to sponsor it yet, and sounded like Jeremy was okay with kind of continuing to review it in the working group for now.
Okay. Cool. Now we got industry reaching out to us on the manhole frame and covers about changing the design on that. Apparently, with the new technologies or new, they can make these things a little stronger and lighter, so that we might see that as a case in the future coming out, for the mainly like the manhole frame and covers. So
Hey, Jim, something to think about on that. Glendale, we've been experiencing some manhole lids popping out, and we actually started weighing them based on the MAG standard, on the standard detail. And we're finding that they're not, from the foundry that we're getting them, they're not meeting the standard for the weight, plus or minus whatever, however many pounds. So if they lighten them up, just take that into consideration.
Well, that's my concern too. It's I'm all for making things streamlined and stronger, but part of the thing is you want a certain weight to them so they keep down without going to a bolt down lid. So that's going to be a concern I'm going to have going forward. We can't make these things too light, because I think we had at one point in MAG we had aluminum lids and we took that out because of the problem. So
they probably disappear.
Well, that plus, the draft of these big trucks just picked them right up. So, I'm all for making, improving something and making it more streamlined and more stronger. But the weight is going to be an issue.
Well, the standard detail does call out a weight, so
true.
The MAG standard, and that's what we're finding. The foundry's not achieving that parameter. They're not in that parameter of weight, and the only reason why we looked at it is, like I said, we're losing manhole lids. They're popping up and they're ending up down the road rolling down the road.
That's good information. Again, we've got to look at the weight factor of it as well.
How much is the weight off?
On a 32-inch lid, 6 pounds, 6 to 8 pounds below the target. I think you're allowed, what is it, 10%? I don't have the detail in front of me. I believe you're allowed 10% or something of the weight, and we're finding them 6 to 8 pounds. Well, I was told 6 to 8 pounds out of spec. Now whether that's from the target weight or from the lower end of the spec, I didn't dive that deep into it. I coordinated the meetings between Nina and Water Services so they could kind of sort that out.
So my theory is that they're starting to manufacture them differently, and so they decided, well, we better get MAG to catch up with it. So that's I don't know, it's just a theory I have, but if you're finding them lighter already, then I think that's what they're trying to do, is they want to go lighter, and maybe there's some warrant to it, but the thing is that the weight is part of the design, basically. So, but yeah, thanks for the comment, and we'll make sure that that's an
Looks
issue
like
going
it's
forward.
on the 30-inch lid. It looks like it's 210 pounds plus or minus 2%.
Yeah.
And that's
Jim, we'll have a presentation in August from Neon.
Okay. But yeah, the weight factor's got to be considered. We can't make them too light. So.
Okay.
And I was referencing real quick. I was referencing MAG.
That'll be a good discussion to have to continue in the working group before that turns into a case then.
Exactly. So that's what we'll vet it. We'll vet it out. And then that's about it. We didn't talk about the other stuff. So our next meeting will be June 20th, same time, online only. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, let's move on to the asphalt materials concrete working group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We discussed the three open cases that we have for this year. Section 725, section 710, and then this combined sections 714 and 15. As we all remember, case 2303 and 2304 were voted on today, so we're done with those. When the basic discussion we had on section 725, 2302 was mirrored in our conversations today and was reflected in the revisions made to the documents. So basically we'll continue to work on 725, and we'll have some new revisions at the next meeting based on the conversations we had today, and separating those two concepts apart into individual cases, and have a new case dealing with the change of wording on fly to coal. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 15th at 1 o'clock, continuing to be a hybrid format at this point. And that's it for us.
Okay, thank you. And then our outside right-of-way working group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our meeting held on May 23rd. You saw some of the results again, like the others have mentioned today. Unfortunately, my apologies for not getting on earlier to see what the discussion was on the vegetated rock bioswales. I believe we're still looking for comments on that, and so we talked about the last meeting. You saw the case today on thermoplastic bodied PVC catch basin, the catch basin bodies. Thank you for the comments. I think we'll continue working with ADS and reach out to the other vendors. That sounds like a great idea. Spillway detail is in the works right now. We did get internal comments on how we want it to look. There was a draft that did come together. I doubt we'll have it ready for the next meeting. And after the discussion today, probably there doesn't seem to be a need to try to rush it through. So we'll go ahead and continue working on that, having it ready for next year, along with some of these other cases. Keith Kesty with the City of Phoenix gave a presentation on his status with the detention tank criteria. We had a few others joining in on that meeting who are helping with that. So right now, I think he had been looking at the plastic type ones. The CMP type, we're going to get some comments from others who had some has had some ideas on that. So I think we'll continue working on that case. Talk very briefly in the meeting about stormwater harvesting basins. Again, we want to continue that, and in addition with the infiltration basins or infiltration trenches, that'll be a detail that would be in addition to the other ones. We can see that going other places. But if scroll down there, I think that encompassed most of what we talked about in that meeting. We'll talk, I think, on our June 15th meeting. I think we have it scheduled at 1 o'clock this time. At the June 15th meeting, I think we'll probably have the primary discussion be this new case for the format and appearance of the document for outside right of way. So it will be an online meeting only on that one, and look forward to getting that new case developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is general discussion. This is an opportunity for the committee to talk about any other items that we haven't had as an agenda item, and this is for any possible discussion. Are there any other items for discussion today?
Just a quick question. Have we gotten any farther on a vice chair position?
Not that I'm aware of. Still looking for someone willing to volunteer for the vice chair position. So yeah, we're kind of coming toward the end of the year. We got a few months left, but we'll continue reaching out and talking to people, but we would really appreciate a volunteer for that. Thank you for the reminder. Any other general discussion items? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 18 then, which is a request for future agenda items aside from those we've already talked about. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, I have something. Most of you may be aware that the ASU Southwest Pavement Consortium has been around for, it's on its third full year now. And I would like to see if the committee would entertain a presentation from Dr. Hassan Ozer at ASU. He is the leader of this particular group. Actually, Gordon, if you'd click on that people directory real quick at the top there. Dr. Hassan is the one that, Ozer is the one that is, he's put this together. He's getting other agencies involved. The first couple of years of the program was mostly, Hassan came here from Illinois, and a lot of it was looking at what we currently have for mixes and kind of where we're at today, right? And also trying to garner support. If you look now at the advisory board, we've got a number of different people that are on the advisory board, from the state engineer from ADOT, the director of Maricopa County, quite a few different folks there. And what we're getting into now in this next year is we know what we have, and there's a couple of research projects that are going to be proposed to this advisory board very shortly that are going to look specifically at long-term and short-term aging of binders, and also looking at all the cracking aspects. Of course, yes, I do sit on the steering committee as a co-chairman with Mr. Matt Manthe from Mesa. So there's a number of other people that are on the steering committee as well. It looks like these two research projects are going to take up a good chunk of what ASU, the researchers and academia, they're pretty extensive, but I'd like him to come in, if the committee would like to listen to it, I'd like him to come in and kind of present, what it is and a little bit about these two research programs. And then the different committee members can see if this is something they'd like to be a part of.
Well, it looked like from the working group report that the materials asphalt concrete group was kind of dwindling on agenda items. So maybe this is actually really good. Jeff knows I'm pretty passionate about this one too. So the hope here is now we kind of know what we have, and
there's some other ideas out there. So, Mr. Chairman, you and I spoke kind of a little bit after last meeting, and looking through, if you're talking about a point A at the lower left and a point B at the upper right, is starting to take this research and starting to apply it to where we can start getting mixes that are less susceptible to cracking. And then along that is trying to determine what is the matrix, what is the cost value along that line between point A and point B. Can you get a good chunk of the benefit with not as much of the cost? And that's really where I think this is headed. The long-term, short-term aging thing in one of the projects is great. The other one is all about cracking. There's a number of different technologies out there that AASHTO, FHWA are looking at implementing as far as what are those acceptance criterias. And so there's a lot of things that are moving, and this is a great one that's local. If you go back to the previous page there, Gordon, yes, right now, there's a lot of people on the advisory board that are going to be coming into the consortium. A lot of us right now, if you scroll up on that page, I'm sorry, down. I think it's towards the bottom of this. There's a lot of people kind of involved a little bit right now, but agencies, in order to keep this thing going and what it is, ultimately, it's to bring everybody kind of, hopefully be somewhat inclusive on what the findings are and start putting this into some of these into real world and get some empirical data along with it.
Yeah, I think my understanding is the presentation would be, you just gave us a 2-minute version of what the consortium is, but
yes,
the presentation would be talking more about what the group is and what they're working to accomplish and how it may, I'm going to add this part, maybe you weren't anticipating this, but and how it may eventually impact our committee.
And it may very well, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be a good presentation myself. Other members of the committee? I'm seeing some head shaking, yes. Okay.
Would that be okay for July, say maybe a 15-minute presentation at the July meeting? Would that be?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, any other future agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Agenda item number 19, comments from the committee. This is an opportunity for members to present a brief summary of current events that you may want to discuss at this time. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.